a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Well, my guest today is an owner and agent at Core Music Agency. He's also a talent agency at Film Industry. Time to meet Ari Wise. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Nancy.
Oh, it's great. I'm just so interested because you've got two different agencies that you own, or right? You own both of them?
No, it's just one agency, Core Music Agency.
Oh, that covers both for music and film industry?
We represent composers specifically for the film industry.
Oh,
so it's all about film scoring music.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's so cool. So when did you get started in that?
Well, I started film scoring going back to the early 90s. I studied film scoring at University of British Columbia, and then grad studies at University of Southern California. And I've just been doing it for a long time. So I did that for about 18 years. And then when I turned 40, I decided I wanted to do something else. So I started this agency. So I was actually physically scoring films myself for about 18 years, and then I came over to the dark side and became an agent.
So what's involved in scoring for movies, for film?
Well, I mean, it's a very collaborative art. So it requires some knowledge of filmmaking, really, because film scoring really is filmmaking, and it's just you're providing the music part of the filmmaking.
Right.
So you really have to understand storytelling. You have to understand the mechanics of how to build a story arcs, character development, and you learn all the parts of filmmaking that help tell that. Lighting, camera angles, camera movement, character development, and music becomes just one of those elements that you have to kind of like slide in with all those other elements. And it requires an understanding of film narrative. It requires understanding of the history of film, and yeah. So that's really it. It's about learning how to make films, and learning how to work collaboratively with directors. A lot of composers, major stumbling block when it comes to learning how to score for films is they look at it as an example to show the world what they can do as an artist.
Right.
And they don't really think about it in terms of like, what this particular film needs from them.
Yeah.
And so it's about understanding that. It's about understanding that you're not there to show off yourself as the world's greatest composer. It's about understanding the needs of the story, whatever that story may be.
Right. I'm just thinking about a really good example would be Jaws, right?
Sure.
Like if it hadn't had that music, it wouldn't have the same effect, right?
Right. I mean, what the magic of Jaws is what you don't see, right?
Yeah.
In fact, you don't really see the shark at all until close to the end. For the most part, what the danger is, what lurks beneath, what is there that you cannot see. And so the very simple, motif that John Williams came up with for that film, that
Yeah.
it's really, if you notice, it's more about not moving than it is about moving. Like the theme itself, the notes move very slowly to start, and then they move faster because the shark is coming in, right? But I mean, it's about that theme creates a certain space, like the pause between intervals. There's a pause, pause, and we're all waiting. What are we waiting for? It's that tension that builds because of that, right?
Yeah. So now, how do you find the musicians to score films?
How do I find the composers?
Sorry, yes.
Or the musicians that will record for Yeah.
You've got both, right?
Yeah, so I leave that up to my composers. So we represent an exclusive roster of 60 composers on our roster,
Okay.
and we have 4 agents, finding them work. And so when my composers get hired for a job, I leave it up to them to hire the musicians that they want to hire to record. So they'll write and they'll record. Like my composers will write and record most of the music themselves, but sometimes they'll hire other musicians to play on the recording,
Yeah.
and so yeah, the composers themselves choose the engineers that they want. They choose the musicians that they want. I leave it up to them. It's their the agent doesn't really get involved too much creatively. The agent is really about, first of all, matchmaking the right composer to the production, making sure that I understand what the production is going for, what kind of a composer they might want, and then matching, the right composer from my roster. Of course, the right composer is always a composer from my roster, but who's the right composer? Somebody from my roster. It's about matching them up, so that my composer clicks creatively with the director, and I know it's not just a matter of like who's really good at writing this kind of music. Sometimes it's about matching personalities. I know that director will really respect this composer, or vice versa, or that they might have a similar way of working. And so once that connection is made, and once the producers make an offer and we drop a contract, and they get the composer on the job and money's exchanged, at that point, I don't get involved creatively at all. I leave all that up to my composers. They're the artists. I'm just the business affairs person.
Right. Now, is this done like for you when connecting with the producers and the director? Is that anywhere like in US, not only Canada, US?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've worked on. I mean, most of our. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn my phone off here.
Okay. I did mine earlier.
I should have done that before we got started. My apologies. Yeah, no, we work on productions all over the world. Mostly Canadian productions for the US, for the Canadian and US market. But we work on co-productions with Germany, Italy, France. We do a lot of work with the United States,
Right. So, okay, so let's just say that, this composer got the music, he's got his musician, got the music, and they've made, this film's been made. Do you ever watch and to see how that works out?
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, we have so many composers who are working on so many things at any one time. I can't possibly watch everything.
Yeah.
When one of my composers is working on a series, I'll typically watch the first couple of episodes just to see, just to know if this is a winner or not, or, who, what other shows I might match them up with based on what I'm seeing on the screen. But it's when my composers work on feature films that might be, highlighted in major festivals or see good distribution. Yeah, I make every effort to see those films, but I can't unfortunately watch everything. Otherwise, I'd be just watching TV all day.
That gets boring after a while, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I love to see what my composers are doing. Often they'll send me a scene or something they're very proud of,
right.
And that will give me an idea. But no, unfortunately, I can't watch everything. It's I would literally be watching
24/7.
24/7.
So have you ever been like really pleasantly surprised with how things turned out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly surprised by. I mean, I'm not surprised as in I thought that was going to be terrible and it turned out great. Often it's just like, well, you never really know how it's going to turn out, and it turns out amazingly well. I mean, I was really surprised. Well, not surprised, but really blown away by the work that one of our composers did, Mark Corvin, on a couple of movies. The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and The Witch had some amazing stars in it. He scored that one too a few years ago, and I was really, really impressed with the filmmaking.
Yeah, very nice. So how did you find those composers originally?
They find me.
They find okay. Because
No, I mean, I mean, I'm very active in the Composers Guild, and I'm always monitoring the market for new talent.
Mhm.
And sometimes, sometimes when we don't get a gig, like if we pitched a composer on a job and we didn't get the job, and then I'll make a point of seeing that film at the film festival, just because I want to know who they hired and why they got the job, and
Right,
then I'll be really impressed by that composer's work, and I might reach out to that composer.
right. So
Yeah.
now you don't do any more of the scoring, or do you still
Myself? No, I haven't written anything in a long time.
do you miss it, or are you happy with doing what you do?
Oh, I mean, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. The answer is yes and no. Like I miss writing music, but I don't miss writing music on demand for the film industry. It's
Yeah.
I had my fill of it. I did a lot, and I probably wrote all the music a person should write in a one lifetime. And so I think I did that. You have to accept when you've passed a certain milestone, and there's no going back.
Right. I just sort of can't I can't picture the whole concept of how it all works out. I've done some student films, but there was never any music involved,
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to imagine how that whole process from beginning to end works. Like they all have to be, as you said, it has to be cooperative, of course, right? Collaborative, whatever the word was, collaborative. I mean, is the editor involved? Like
Sure. Yeah. So often when production is shopping for a composer, they'll reach out to a few people that they think might be appropriate,
mhm,
and maybe they'll show them a rough cut or a fine cut, and maybe the composer will have some ideas, or they'll just send them music from their that they've they'll send them some music that they've written before, maybe for other projects that they think, are you looking for this sound or that sound? And then they'll just send them some examples, and that'll get the filmmaker listening and imagining,
right,
maybe even taking that music and putting it up on screen for some of their scenes in a very rough way, just to get an idea of, like, does this set the right tone?
mhm,
And then and then at that point, they'll make their decision about the composer, and or they'll have meetings. At that point, they'll narrow it down to like maybe 3 choices, and they'll have meetings with those composers, just over the phone or on Zoom or whatever. Nowadays, very, very little happens in person anymore, which is kind of sad, but also easier. And they'll get a sense for, whether they think the composer has the right temperament, whether there's a certain creative energy there that works, if they like the composer, and if they they get along. So at that point, then they'll reach out to me and they'll say, or to one of my other agents working for me, and say, yeah, we'd like to make an offer on so and so. If we think this is going to be great. And then the negotiation starts, and that's when, so it's really important for the creative people to mesh first,
right.
to see if there's a connection, see if the composer has ideas, and once that happens, then it's easier for me to sell the composer. It's easier for me to negotiate, because at that point, the producer likes it. They like the composer. They like the concept that the composer's pitching, and to go back to the table and start with a different idea, like they don't necessarily want to do that. So it's really, for me, it's more important for them to click first and then negotiate.
Now you said you studied scoring at university. So how long is that course?
Well, I did a composition degree, and that was really, I took 6 years to do a 4-year degree.
That's like
because I kept changing my majors. Like, getting into composition at a university is very hard, and it took me a couple of tries. and that's the story of my life. I've never hit it on the nail the first time, but the second or third time, yeah. So I tried to get in the composition department at UBC a couple times, and they graciously, they saw, I guess I had potential, so they allowed me to take the right courses, but not in the full program. And then a couple of years later, I was allowed into the full program, so I did a degree there. But it took me 6 years to do a 4-year degree, and which meant I took a lot of courses that, more courses than I were necessary to get a degree, but I learned a lot, so that's good. That's right. And then I went to grad school at the University of Southern California, and that was specifically scoring for motion pictures and television, and that was in LA, and yeah, that's when I really learned a lot. I got the backroom look at how everything is made, how the sausages are made, really.
Right.
And but I didn't really learn. I mean, I learned a lot from school, but really I learned most of what I know from just doing it. And I that's, when I'm asked to talk at film festivals or whatnot, I always say that, they say, well, do you need a degree in composition to do this? And no, the answer is no. I mean, it certainly helps. The more tools you have in your chest, the better, because you never know what you're going to be required to do.
Right.
And the ability to do, to have a wide set of skills will definitely help your career. But you don't need a classical education to do this. In fact, sometimes that gets in the way. So it just requires grit and the ability to learn and the ability to try anything. And yeah.
So, okay, so you would compose your music. Are you also a singer? Do you play instruments? Like when you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I used to be a semi-professional musician. I played all the wind instruments. I played saxophones and clarinets, and I played in like pit orchestras and things like that, and bands. But I never had a career. I mean, I played in a funk band for a while, but I never had a career as a rock and roll musician. I was orchestrally trained, orchestral and jazz. So that's and then as soon as I got into composition, I didn't stop playing, but I was definitely more veering towards writing and producing music rather than playing in other people's ensembles.
So I would think all of that background would really make it when you start your agency, you have so much knowledge, right?
Yeah, I learned a few tricks. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that must have helped tremendously when starting your business.
Yeah, but like everything, when I jumped into my career of film composing, film scoring, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I thought I knew what I was doing, but you learn, you just jump in the pool and then somebody slaps you hard and then you just stand up and do it again until and so the same thing with when I started my agency. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was doing. I'd been doing, like, when I was writing music I had agents myself, and whenever I co-wrote with another composer, I was the one who was always reading the contracts, and I was always the one who was doing the negotiating. And I guess I just had like a penchant for law. I guess I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I sometimes think maybe I should have been, because that's just the way my mind works.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because that's what the whole thing, right? Our minds work certain ways, right?
Yeah. I'm a problem solver by nature. So, and this is what I've been told, and this is what I understand about myself, is I see a situation and it seems, I want to like untangle the spaghetti. I want to figure out the best way to get from A to B, and that's often what a composer has to do, or a composer agent has to do for their composers, is like every job you do, every job a composer starts is going to be completely different from anything they've done before.
Yeah, for sure.
There'll always be very different variables, and it's about figuring it out. So that's what my mind is good at, is like solving puzzles.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I think we're going to end it there. I just find out the whole thing so fascinating, because I heard about scoring, but not really knowing anything about it. So it's kind of fascinating to learn about that.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it. Thank you for having me on your program.
For sure. Just stay on camera. I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience. So
Sure.
listen to owner of the agency, Core Music Agency, Ari Wise. He's over on the island in Victoria, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And so maybe you can look for some of it. Oh, wait a minute. No, nobody would know when a composer's been hired to do a scoring. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know that they're like when you see the credits, you don't get any credit for that.
Nobody credits the agent. No. No.
That's not right. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. I hope you keep on doing so. Take care and peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.